The Hall of Convergence was the largest chamber humanity had ever stepped into, an endless dome of drifting platforms, each carrying representatives from worlds so distant Earth's telescopes had barely mapped them. Suspended bridges of light crossed the air like woven threads, echoing with murmurs in hundreds of languages. Some delegates shimmered like polished glass. Others flickered like contained storms. A few existed as flowing clouds of bioluminescent vapor. At the eastern platform stood the human delegation. Leading them was Ambassador Sarah Chun, tall, sharp-eyed, and steady in her crisp Navy uniform. Behind her, 12 humans stood in a disciplined line. Their attire looked almost painfully simple compared to the vibrant, ornate garments around them, but there was a quiet strength in their posture that made them stand out nonetheless. For 3 millennia, the Galactic Assembly had been the center of interstellar cooperation, a place where each new species was assigned a role to support the massive, intricate network that kept the galaxy functioning. Some species handled agriculture across dozens of star systems. Others performed conflict mediation, transportation, trade regulation, or high-level computation. Every species adapted to a niche. Today, humanity was about to be given theirs. Chen had spent half a year studying assembly law, etiquette, and treaties. She'd memorized every clause and loophole, every custom and expectation. But she already knew the pattern. New species were always placed at the bottom, given the unwanted roles, the forgotten duties, the tasks the ancient races considered beneath them. Hovering above the hall, glowing with shifting blue and white refractions, was the Speaker of the Assembly, a Vorhack crystal being whose voice harmonized through embedded sound projectors. "Today," the Speaker intoned, "we welcome a young civilization, the humans of Earth. They have demonstrated cooperation, adaptability, and the capacity for starflight. They are now worthy of service among us." Mild applause fluttered across the hall. Not excitement, politeness. Encouragement offered to a child performing adequately. A few delegates didn't bother looking up from their data screens. The Karathai representative spoke first. Tall, lean, violet-skinned, with her slender arms folded respectfully, he offered a gentle smile. The humans progressed remarkably fast. 2 centuries ago, they wielded simple tools. Now they traversed the stars. Admirable for a species so new to civilization. Chun felt a familiar irritation prickle beneath her calm expression. They always use that word. Young. As if limited spaceflight history erased everything else humanity had achieved. The Zeely representative followed. Short, round, green, eyes wide like lanterns. "Humans have fought countless wars among themselves," she remarked. "Their history shows a troubling comfort with conflict. We must be cautious in granting them important duties." Other delegates nodded somberly. Then came the Mistral, speaking through a sphere of softly pulsing light. "All species can grow beyond violence," it said gently. "We will guide the humans toward peace." Chen's inner reaction was a silent, humorless laugh. They'd observed humanity from afar, and thought that was enough to understand them. They saw battlefields, but not the decisions, desperation, or diplomacy behind them. The Speaker's crystal body, flash white. After deliberation, the Assembly assigns Earth the role of hazardous materials supervision and outer zone waste management. They are resilient and accustomed to environmental risks. They are suited for duties others may find unpleasant. A hush followed, then polite applause, mandatory approval, waste management, a galactic sanitation detail. Chen held her posture, though annoyance pulsed beneath her skin. Of course this would be their placement. Undesirable, unnoticed, and conveniently far from important affairs. Still, she bowed her head slightly. "The people of Earth accept this responsibility with gratitude. We will fulfill your expectations." Delegates smiled, relieved. Humility was what they wanted. Compliance was what they expected. But a handful of older representatives watched him more closely. They caught a glimmer in her eyes. Patience, calculation. Something that didn't match the stereotype of impulsive human aggression. As the hall dispersed, Chen thanked those who approached. She shook hands, exchanged formal gestures, and kept her expression warm. Yet behind the smile, she analyzed every detail. The hall's structure, the delegates' positions, the flow of traffic, the hidden exits, the unattended corners. She moved like a diplomat, but her instincts were undeniably military. The Assembly believed they had placed humanity safely on the sidelines. They hadn't realized they'd just given humans unrestricted access to every forgotten star system and neglected outpost across the galactic frontier. It would be their first miscalculation, but not their last. 6 months had crawled by since Earth's quiet induction into the Assembly, and the initial novelty had long since faded. The galaxy still saw humanity as newcomers assigned to menial labor on the outskirts of civilization. Cleaners, hazard handlers, technicians for forgotten corners of space. To the Assembly, they were invisible. To Sarah Chun, invisibility was an opportunity. From her small office aboard Station Omega, one of many outer ring outposts humans now serviced, Chun studied hundreds of incoming field reports. On the surface, they looked routine: radiation cleanups, toxic spills, malfunctioning waste units, derelict outposts needing maintenance. Necessary work, but to the Assembly, trivial, except her people weren't simply cleaning or hauling refuse. They were collecting data. Every assignment took them deeper into the skeleton of the galactic network. Human crews mapped forgotten trade routes, analyzed structural weaknesses in outdated defense grids, and noticed which star systems received full protection and which were quietly abandoned. No one paid attention to garbage collectors. And that anonymity allowed humans to learn more than any formal diplomat ever could. Chen's datapad beeped, a high-priority alert. She tapped it, expecting another routine report. Instead, her brows knit instantly. Ambassador, we have a crisis. Corvin system under siege. Pirates blockading 3 worlds. Assembly fleet refusing engagement, requesting permission to intervene. Captain Stevens, recycler. 7. Chen's chest tightened. The Corvin were gentle artisans, furred, otter-like beings known for music, craft, and peace. They had no military, no weapons, not even armed police. Their worlds were defenseless. She opened the live feeds. Cities burning, civilians fleeing, pirate ships orbiting overhead with predatory ease. The blockade had lasted 3 days. The Assembly's fleet was present but merely observing. Not a single shot fired. Not one rescue attempt. Chun switched to the emergency Assembly channel. For hours, no, days, the same circular arguments repeated endlessly. Admiral Course, a red-skinned Kitha with sharp rows of teeth, spoke first. His tone was dry, rehearsed. We cannot risk direct action. The enemy possesses unfamiliar weapons. Delegate Vorth, crystalline and shimmering, sighed melodically. We must consider sanctions. Starve them of resources. Sanctions? Another delegate protested. People are dying. An Alathai scientist insisted they needed years to study the pirates' technology first. Back and forth, around and around. Excuses layered upon excuses. It was governance through hesitation. Protocols smothering urgency. Chun listened quietly, jaw tight. Finally, she activated a direct channel. Admiral Course, this is Ambassador Chun. Earth formally requests authorization to deploy our ships for evacuation and counteraction. The Admiral blinked in surprise before schooling his face. Ambassador, with respect, your people are trash handlers. This is not your field. Delegate Maroff, whose green skin shimmered with smug amusement, laughed openly. Humans barely understand galactic warfare. What assistance could you possibly offer? Chun ignored the mockery. We are familiar with the weapons they're using. The channel fell silent. Admiral Course leaned closer. Explain. Phase variant energy weapons, she said. They shift frequencies to bypass shield harmonics. A discarded human design from centuries ago. Murmurs rippled through hundreds of delegates. And how do you propose we counter these? The Admiral asked. Cycle shield frequencies faster than the beam can adjust. Chun replied evenly. Or use physical munitions. Or overload their power nodes via flank positioning. The Kitha captain scoffed politely. Theories. Nothing more. Chun looked back at the feed. Corvin families huddled in collapsed homes. Children crying. Smoke swallowing skylines. Every passing second meant another life lost. I request authorization, she repeated. Request denied. Course said instantly. I second, Maroth added. Humans are too volatile for delicate operations. 600 voices echoed in agreement. She remained utterly still. Behind her, Torres, Kim, and the rest of her team waited, soldierly silent, ready. The delegates continued droning on, congratulating themselves for denying Earth involvement. Chen finally spoke again. Admiral, thank you for your time. Korst exhaled in relief. We appreciate your understanding. I understand perfectly, she said, eyes narrowing just slightly. Then she ended the call with 4 cold, unforgettable words. Then we'll do better. The room around her went still. Commander Torres spoke first. Orders, ma'am. Chen's expression hardened. Signal every human vessel. Prepare for deployment. Dr. Kim hesitated only for a heartbeat. The Assembly will consider this an act of war. Chen's voice was calm, almost serene. Let them. And with that, 12 waste management ships pivoted toward the Corvin system, unarmed on paper, underestimated by all, and carrying the one thing the galaxy never accounted for. Humans who refused to stand by while innocents died. 12 human vessels cut through the void toward the Corvin system. An odd, patchwork fleet made of refurbished cargo haulers, hazard collection ships, and maintenance craft. Nothing about them resembled a proper military force. Their hulls carried warning stripes, waste processing insignias, and innocuous registry numbers. To any observer, they looked like slow civilian workships stumbling into the wrong star system. But inside, they had quietly become something else entirely. Aboard the Terrara's Pride, Captain Maria Santos stood at the central console, watching the stars stretch into threads as the ship approached jump exit. Her bridge crew, 15 men and women hardened by experience and sharpened by necessity, worked with quiet precision. Over months, they had replaced outdated scanners with military-grade arrays, reinforced the hull with improvised plating, and hidden compact weapons inside compartments meant for containment units. None of it was technically illegal. The Assembly simply hadn't expected waste management crews to modify their ships with ingenuity only humans seem to possess. Message from Ambassador Chun. Lieutenant Park announced. Full operational freedom granted. Santos nodded tightly. Good. Status. Commander Blake, her second-in-command, rattled it off. 12 ships. 137 personnel. Minimal armor. Limited weapons. 0 reinforcements. Santos didn't flinch. What advantages do we have? Blake cracked a grim smile. Surprise. Creativity. And 6 months of quiet reconnaissance across the galaxy. Santos allowed herself a small smirk. Good enough. The tactical display flickered, showing an outline of the Corvin system. 3 shimmering blue-green planets orbiting a soft white star. Encircling them like vultures were 30 pirate vessels of mixed origins, stolen patrol craft, outdated destroyers, retrofitted cruisers. No discipline, no unified network. A patchwork force held together by greed and brutality. Beyond them, sitting idle, was the Assembly fleet, large, gleaming, and sterile in its inaction. They held position outside the conflict. Watching as though the violence below were a distant storm, they had no obligation to quiet. Lieutenant Chun, no relation to the ambassador, zoomed the scan. Pirate ships are scattered across the blockade. Formation is loose. No command synchronization detected. They're not a fleet, Blake muttered. Just a mob with guns. And a dangerous one, Santos added. But mobs have weaknesses. Dr. Lisa Wong, the ship psychologist, studied intercepted chatter scrolling across her screen. Morale is fractured. Several captains disagree about how long to maintain the blockade. A few want to leave with the tribute they've already collected. So they don't trust each other, Santos concluded. Oh, they trust each other about as much as we trust unsealed airlocks, Dr. Wong replied calmly. Santos inhaled. The beginnings of a strategy flickered through her mind. Fast, flexible, and entirely unorthodox. Not the sort of plan the Assembly's tactical academies would approve of. But then again, humans weren't exactly trying to impress the Assembly anymore. She opened a channel to all 12 ships. This is Captain Santos of Terrara's Pride. Our objective is simple. Break the blockade in 72 hours. Save the civilians. Drive out the pirates. Do what the Assembly refuses to do. She paused. We're going to use human tactics. The kind they never saw coming. Across the fleet, acknowledgments chimed. Phase 1 began immediately. Instead of charging toward the pirate line, the human ships scattered in different directions, accelerating in uneven, unpredictable paths. To the pirates, it looked like panic. Fleeing civilians with no idea what they were doing. Some pirate crews jeered and fired lazy shots, amused by the spectacle. Perfect. Within hours, the human fleet had vanished into asteroid fields, planetary magnetospheres, and radiation belts, places no civilized fleets dared enter. The Assembly commanders watching from afar were baffled. They sent a barrage of stern messages demanding an explanation. Santos ignored every one of them. On Corvin's third moon, something changed. The planet's communication grid, which had been jammed for days, flickered back to life. Families reconnected. Emergency shelters coordinated. For the first time, hope breathed. The pirates didn't know how it happened. Their jammers were active. What they didn't know was that Dr. Kim's team had spent months studying galactic communication systems, learning to bypass, subvert, and reroute signals through environmental interference. Phase 1 was just the beginning. While the pirates scrambled to adjust their frequencies, Phase 2 took root across the sector. Supply convoys bound for the blockade began disappearing. Fuel depots went dark. Ammunition shipments failed to arrive. No explosions. No battles. Just silence. Captain Rereath, the pirate commander, stomped across his dreadnought bridge. Where are my supply ships? Gone, his lieutenant stammered. No distress calls. No wreckage. Nothing. Rereath snarled. Find them. But his scouts searched and found only empty starfields. Humans had not destroyed the convoys. They had stolen them, hidden them in dead systems, emptied them without leaving a trace. A dozen precision strikes carried out by teams led by Commander Torres, silent, surgical, and invisible. Pirates panicked, and that panic was the real beginning of the end. The Corvin system had shifted. What began as a hopeless siege was quietly tilting. Unseen by the Assembly, unnoticed by most pirates, but unmistakable to anyone paying close attention. Human fingerprints were everywhere now. In the restored communications, in the missing supply ships, in the sudden unease spreading through pirate ranks like an infection. And yet, not a single human ship had fired a weapon. Not yet. On the bridge of the Terrara's Pride, Captain Santos watched the tactical map as pirate formations shifted. The blockade ring was fraying. Ships that had once held steady positions were drifting, arguing, or breaking formation entirely. Phase 2 is working, Lieutenant Park said. Pirates are rationing fuel. Several ships disabled external sensors to conserve power. Blake smirked. They're blind, starved, and angry. Not a great mix. Santos folded her arms. Angry men make stupid decisions, and stupid decisions create openings. New alerts bloomed across the display. Intercepted pirate chatter crackled over speakers. Panicked, disorganized, increasingly desperate. They're accusing each other of theft, Dr. Wong noted. Some think rival pirate clans sabotaged the blockade. Others blame internal traitors. Perfect, Santos murmured. Let them turn on each other. But the real pressure point hadn't been hit yet. That required Phase 3. Santos opened a secure comm line to Ambassador Chin on Station Omega. Maria Chin greeted, her tone steady. Report. We're progressing, Santos said. But to break the blockade fully, we need to target command. Rereath's dreadnought runs the strongest weapons and a coordination grid. If that ship falls, everything collapses. Chin nodded slowly. And your plan? Santos hesitated for the briefest moment, not out of doubt, but because she knew how unorthodox her next words were. We board his ship. Kim, listening from behind Chun, nearly choked. Board? Captain, with what? We're a maintenance fleet, not a special forces unit. Santos gave a thin smile. Every waste management crew carries hazard exosuits. Sealed, armored, resistant to toxins, radiation, high temperatures. If we modify them, they'll perform like heavy boarding armor, and the pirates won't expect anything like it. Chun considered the idea. It was reckless, bold, human. Do it, Chun said finally. The channel closed. Phase 3 began. Across all 12 vessels, humans work with intense, precise energy. Hazard exosuits were retrofitted with reinforced plating, repurposed plasma cutters, and improvised shield boosters. Chemical sprayers were converted into dispersal tools for EMP gel. Even the waste compactor systems were transformed into magnetic launch pads, primitive but effective methods to breach hulls. Humans didn't have the best technology, but they had imagination. Inside the suit bay, Torres sealed his hull with a hiss and tested the joint servos. Feels good. Heavy, but good. Mechanic Juno Vasquez grinned. You look like a walking furnace. Torres flexed. Better than walking garbage man. Santos' voice echoed through the bay speakers. Torres, your team will lead infiltration. Target the engineering deck. Disable the Dreadnought's power core, but keep gravity and life support running. We're not killing them, just removing their teeth. Aye, ma'am, he said. At the same moment, in the pirate flagship, Captain Rereath sensed something shifting. The fur along his thick, reptilian neck bristled uneasily. Why did the jammers fail earlier? He snapped. His lieutenant flinched. We still don't know. And the supply convoys? No survivors. No signals. Nothing. Rereath growled, tail lashing the metal floor. If someone is sabotaging us, I'll skin them alive. Sir, what if it's the humans? The lieutenant whispered. Reports say 12 human ships entered the system. Rereath barked a harsh laugh. Humans? Those trash haulers? Pathetic. They don't have a fleet. They don't even have weapons. But his laughter died when a warning alarm blared. Mass objects, 12 of them, exiting asteroid cover. Fast. Directly approaching. The comm officer paled. Sir, they're coming straight toward us. Rereath leaned forward, stunned. They're charging the blockade, with workships. The tactical display zoomed in on the incoming vessels. Not fleeing, not hiding, advancing. Rereath's face twisted. They're insane. His lieutenant swallowed. Sir, they're human. And for the first time, fear crept into the pirate commander's voice. The human fleet surged forward, not in a straight formation, not in a disciplined wedge, but in an erratic, unpredictable swarm. Their ships twisted, rolled, and cut across each other's trajectories in a way no formal navy would dare attempt. To the watching assembly commanders, the motion looked reckless. To the pirates, it looked suicidal. But to humans, it was strategy. Captain Santos issued rapid-fire orders. All ships, activate thermal masking. Dump non-essential heat into decoys. No predictable signatures. Immediately, every vessel's readings blurred, scrambled, or fragmented into false trails. Pirate sensors lit up with dozens of ghost targets. The blockade turned chaotic. Where are they? They're everywhere. No, they're nowhere. Inside the Dreadnought, Captain Rereath watched the tactical map dissolve into useless static. What did they do? He roared. His lieutenant's voice cracked. They're spoofing the heat signatures. I've never seen anyone do it with scrap ships. Rereath bared his jagged teeth. Then shoot everything. I want them vaporized. Cannons lit up across the blockade, firing wildly at empty space. Missiles chased false trails and detonated in meaningless bursts. Every shot wasted fuel the pirates desperately needed. Santos watched this with cold satisfaction. Good, she murmured. Let them exhaust themselves. Her crew cheered softly. But Phase 4 wasn't about destroying the pirates. It was about delivering Torres and his infiltration team to the Dreadnought. Approaching docking vector, Blake reported. Signal Torres. Begin deployment. The boarding operation. Deep inside the Terrara's Pride, Torres and 28 crew members gathered in the launch chamber. Their repurposed hazard suits gleamed under red emergency lights. Heavy armor, thruster packs, reinforced boots, and improvised tools strapped to each limb. Torres inhaled slowly. Remember the plan. Breach. Disable the power core. Don't kill, unless we're forced. We're here to end this, not escalate it. Vasquez cracked her knuckles inside her armored gloves. Let's go make history. The launch doors peeled open, revealing the cold void of space, one after another. The humans stepped into the vacuum, magnetic propulsion packs igniting with brief blue flares. Even the pirates were stunned when they saw it. Sir, the humans, they're walking through space? No suits. Re-wreathed Bart. Not normal ones. These are, I don't know what they are. To pirate scanners, the human infiltration squad looked like fragments of debris drifting toward the dreadnought. By the time they realized the truth, Torres and his team were already attaching themselves to the hull with magnetic anchors. Cutting entry point, Torres said. Plasma cutter sparked, slicing a perfect circle into the dreadnought's plating. The metal disc drifted away, silently. Go, Torres ordered. They entered, inside the pirate flagship. The dreadnought's corridors were cramped, dim, and reeking of unfiltered exhaust fumes. Pirate crew members reacted with panic the moment they saw the armored figures advancing like silent tanks. What are they? Don't shoot. You'll hit the fuel lines. Humans surged forward with precision. They weren't faster or stronger than the pirates, just more disciplined, more coordinated, more prepared. Torres used EMP gel to disable automated turrets. Vasquez sealed heavy blast doors with industrial foam. Others cut power conduits, rerouted emergency systems, and jammed pirate sensors. Every move had been planned and practiced. Every strike was purposeful, and they moved deeper. Engineering deck ahead, Torres said. 2 minutes. Re-Retha's desperation. On the bridge, alarms blared like dying animals. Sir, they've breached the lower decks. What? How? Re-Reith roared. They're disabling every system they pass. Communication nodes, coolant vents, targeting arrays. Re-Reith slammed his fist into the console. Seal the engineering deck. Vent the rest. His lieutenant froze. But our crew... Do it. But before he could execute the command, engineering deck compromised. The system announced flatly, What do you mean compromised? Re-Reith screamed. At that moment, Torres' voice crackled over every pirate speaker system. Calm and controlled. Captain Re-Reith, this is Commander Torres of the human fleet. Your power core is disabled, your weapons are controlled, and your engines are locked. Surrender, and no one else gets hurt. Re-Reith stared at the speakers, stunned, speechless. Humans, trash handlers, hazard crews. They had taken his dreadnought. In less than 20 minutes. Captain Re-Reith stood frozen on his bridge, eyes wide, chest heaving. For the first time since he'd seized command of the Corvin blockade, fear coiled in his gut. Not fear of death, but of humiliation. He had calculated every possibility before launching the attack, except this one. No pirate leader in the galaxy would believe him if he said the truth aloud. His flagship had been boarded and disabled by human garbage crews. His bridge crew stared at him, waiting for orders he couldn't form. His communications officer opened and closed their mouths soundlessly, as though words were failing to materialize. Re-Reith finally growled, Get me visual. Show me what they've done. The main screen flickered. First static. Then Torres' armor form filled the display. Smoke drifted behind him from damaged power conduits. His hazard suit glowed faintly from residual heat. Captain Re-Reith, Torres repeated calmly, Your ship is finished. Your blockade is collapsing. Order your crews to stand down. Re-Reith bared his teeth. You think humans can order me? Torres tilted his head, almost pitying. I think you run out of options. Behind Torres, 2 more humans dragged in the dreadnought's chief engineer. Still alive, shaken but unharmed. They set him down gently beside the power core. We protect our enemies better than you protect your own people, Torres said quietly. That struck deeper than any weapon. Re-Reith staggered back into his command chair. His tail drooped. The entire bridge watched him, no longer with respect, but with dread and disappointment. He covered his face with both hands. Stand down, he croaked. The words barely escaped his throat, but the ship obeyed. All pirate vessels received the surrender broadcast. Some resisted at first, firing a few final, panic shots into the void. But as their flagship's power signature dropped to zero, discipline across the blockade crumbled like rotted metal. Human ships didn't fire back. They didn't need to. One by one, pirate vessels powered down weapons, lowered shields, and cut engines. Within an hour, the blockade was gone. After the battle, Corvan civilians peered out from shelters and underground passages, expecting the worst. Instead, they found humans escorting pirates into containment modules, providing medical care to injured noncombatants, and repairing damaged infrastructure. Human engineers worked side by side with Corvan healers, patching water lines, stabilizing reactor cores, cleaning radiation pockets, tasks that felt strangely familiar to the waste management crews they'd been labeled as. Dr. Kim's scientific team restored the planet's emergency grid in record time. Lieutenant Park organized communication relays to reconnect families across the system. Santos' fleet redistributed captured pirate supplies to refugee camps, and the Corvan watched it all with awe. "We thought you were workers," one Corvan elder whispered to Santos. Santos shook her head. "We are." The elder blinked. "Then why would workers fight for us?" Santos looked up at the sky, where her ships floated like small, stubborn stars. "Because we don't wait for permission to do what's right. The assembly reacts." 2 days later, the assembly chambers erupted in pandemonium. Footage of humans boarding the pirate flagship had spread across thousands of systems. Debates and accusations raged like wildfire. They defied direct orders. They interfered in a sovereign matter. They altered the outcome of a galactic crisis without authorization. But other delegates, quiet ones, thoughtful ones, watched the same footage with different eyes. They saved the civilization. They risked their lives when no one else would. They did what we should have done. The Vorhack speaker tried to regain order, but the chamber had already erupted into factions, and then Ambassador Sarachin entered. Silence rippled through the dome. She walked to the central platform, posture crisp, presence steady. "The human fleet," she began, responded to a distress call that the assembly ignored. "We restored peace, captured criminals, and protected civilians." She paused. "If that is a violation, then perhaps the rules need updating." Gasps echoed. 100 delegates whispered frantically. Chun continued, voice quiet but unshakable. "Earth is done being underestimated. Assign us the tasks you wish. Call us workers, cleaners, or a new species still learning the stars. But know this." Her eyes scanned the entire chamber. "When lives are at risk, humanity will never stand aside." Torres, Santos, Kim, and every crew member watching from remote stations felt a surge of pride. And across the galaxy, billions who had once dismissed humanity began to reconsider. Workers, waste handlers, hazard crews. No, they were something else entirely. They were the ones who moved when everyone else froze.